Hi. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. My husband's with me too.
Peter.
Nice to see you. Kinda.
Consider he's off camera.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Cool. I'm glad you guys are here. And Ann Rollins, I see you. Hello. Good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay, thank you.
Good. And I see Bev. Good job changing your name to Bev and Nikki. All right. Good to see you, Bev. All right. Egberts are in the house. Good to see you guys. Good to see you. Rosalind, I see you. All right. Good evening. John. Hello. How you doing, John? All right, good. Eileen, you and Philip are here, both?
We are both here. He's finishing the dishes.
As he should. As he
You hear
should.
that,
All right, good. I will write that down. Okay.
Oh, it is.
We got others coming in. Let's see here. Bob and Denise, I see you both. Hi, guys. Kyle's there. Hello, Kyle. We have a Saul or just a Kyle? Just a Kyle.
He'll be showing in person tomorrow.
All right. In person's good too. Good. All right. Sheila, long time no talk.
Hi.
Hi, good to see you. Bev Aaron in the house. Good to see you, Bev. I'm glad you're here. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, good. All right. Okay. Terry and Ken. Okay. Good to see you guys. All right, and there's Amy. See you, Amy.
Hello, Bruce is driving.
All right. Bruce, keep your eyes on the road.
Oh.
All right, good. Sharon, I see you. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Rabbi Spike.
Good to see you. And I see Jerry, or I don't see Jerry, but she's here.
Hi, everyone.
Jeff Jacobson is here. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
Yes. Charlie Cohn. He's here. The Joy is here as well. All right, good. So I'm gonna have folks mute. A couple more coming in, and as they come in, they'll just join us. All right, friends. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to take a look at this here.
It's coming up.
All right, I'm going to ask everyone to mute if you would, unless you're going to be answering a question. If you're answering a question, then there we go. All right. Okay, and Katz's are here. All right, good. All right. So I think, good evening. Hope everybody's doing really well. And anybody who registered for the class got the follow-up email from last week where you got the materials, both the SACS drosh and the syllabus from last week with the questions that we wound up on, which we're going to be starting again with. So I hope everyone had a chance to read through that SACS article again. Okay, that way we can hit the ground running when we do. And I'm glad to see everybody here. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to take a look. Everybody see the screen okay? All right, good. So this is part of Temple Emanu-El's lifelong learning. And of course, most of the lifelong learning that we're doing these days are in mini mesters. The mini mesters are, for the most part, 3 weeks in a row. Tuesday nights online only, Wednesday noon in person only, so that we don't have to hybrid teach, which is difficult to do. So we teach the same course, the same class twice, and you can mix and match. So you can come in person 1 week and online the next week, and it all should work out. It's the same plan. It's never the same class, but it's the same plan. This one, of course, is titled The Jewish Civilization with a question mark, taken from Mordecai Kaplan's Magna Opus and kind of going backwards from there. The taglines, what are we Jews and what is Judaism? Are we a people, a culture, a religion, or something even more profound? From our inception, we Jews were tapped to become and bring to the world a new way of being, of interacting, and of inspiring. Through Jewish text, liturgy, history, and politics, we'll examine the idea behind a Jewish civilization and the state that it's in today. Next, you've got listed the dates that we're having this course. Tonight is the 14th. Tomorrow will be the 15th, but I want to point out in the red, next week, for those who were thinking about coming in person next Wednesday, not tomorrow, but a week from, we're actually going to be, a group of us are going down to the Georgia State Capitol to lobby for the definition for anti-Semitism to be brought into law. And so that Wednesday class next week will happen on Thursday as well. So you can, of course, do Tuesday night online or Thursday in person. And we've got a good sized group from a Temple Emanu-El going. And I hope it's helpful. I don't know many more details other than we were requested to go. Apparently, certain levels of numbers can influence opinions and votes of people who we elect. And it's an important time. All right. So last week, we finished by reading A Tale of Two Civilizations by Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. And the 3 questions, or the 4 questions that we posed and said we're going to start a class with today was, how does Rabbi Sacks frame the Jewish civilization versus the Egyptian civilization? And 3,000 years or so later, meaning now, what is lasting from each? What's lasting about the Egyptian civilization? What's lasting about the Jewish civilization? What's influential on the world from each? And then how does Sacks see the role of memory is vital to the Jewish civilization? Remember last time we started with an exercise of what is a civilization, a great civilization, what makes these things? Okay, and this led us to our article. So I'm going to stop sharing for the moment. We're going to look at this first question. How does Rabbi Sacks frame Jewish civilization versus Egyptian civilization? Someone want to take a crack? All right, John, you're up first. You just unmute yourself. I'm not hearing you, John. Is anybody else hearing him? So you're not muted, but I'm not hearing you. I don't know what to tell you. Try talking again. Oh, now you're muted. I'm not sure. John, I'm going to come back to you. Okay, Bob, do you want to answer?
I think the main difference that he was discussing was Egyptian was, what's lasting is the structures and what was built, versus Jewish civilization, which is, rather than structures, what is passed down in stories and education from generation to generation.
Yeah, right. The Egyptian civilization was based on structures and buildings and statues, memorials, right? as opposed to, and this is just one of the things that he says, the Jewish civilization is based on building ideas and passing on particular types of ideas, and the specifics are very important, through the different generations until they influence and get to us today. All right, remember the Yeats poem, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, in despair. All right, you've got the poem which talks about the two giant colossal feet in the sand, and there's nothing else around. And you've got this king who, in the inscription, talks about how mighty he is, and look at all this, and yet thousands of years later, the only thing that's lasting are his feet in the inscription. Right? There's an idea that even that time will take away those things. What could be lasting? Probably thoughts and ideas, right? A certain way of being. What else? What else was a main difference between Egyptian civilization and what we're calling the Jewish civilization? Stacy.
Well, he talked about how the Egyptian civilization was full of, this all-powerful empire, and the Jewish civilization very much being a group of, slaves and laborers, and this, how could one ever imagine that the Jewish civilization would last for, for eternity, that they would be the chosen ones versus, these beat down group of individuals versus this big behemoth empire. And he compared kind of this big giant versus the smaller fish, but the smaller fish, kind of sustained and continued to expand.
Good. Others? Yeah, Bev? You're muted.
The Israelites became child-centered with the importance of teaching and educating, and then down through the ages, the things that we've gotten from the Torah and passed on from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
Our values and
Beautiful. And extrapolating a little bit from this Sachs article and other drashas, right? The Egyptian culture was based on the idea of might equals right, right? If you can overpower someone, you have a right to do it, whether that's in an individual or a people. Why shouldn't I enslave you if I can conquer you and subdue you to my will? As opposed to the Jewish civilization, especially once we get out of Egypt, is seeking to create something not based on might equals right, right? But the idea that right equals right, that there's such thing as justice, right? And right and wrong, regardless or irregardless of how strong an individual or a nation is. Egypt was, for the most part, based on a set worth for a human life, and lower stratospheres of a social hierarchy were worth less than the upper ones, right? The slave was worth less than the artisan, who was worth less than the aristocrat, and of course, worth less than Pharaoh. So there is a numerical number, a monetary number put on a human life, as opposed to in the Jewish civilization, and this could be an aspirational thing, we profess that we're created b'tselem Elohim, right? That we are all created in the image of God. And now for the first time, you have the democratization of not just law, but morality. So in societies like the Egyptian society, and there are many societies then and now which operate like this, if you killed somebody who was of a lower hierarchy in the social stratosphere, then it might not even be a crime, or if it was, punishable by a monetary recompense to their family. As opposed to in Judaism, for the first time, you get this idea that the king has the same law as the slave. the same law as the slave. And not until 1215 with the Magna Carta do you see this come forward in Western civilization outside of Torah, right? There's other pieces of this, right? Here you've got a society, the Jewish civilization, which says we're going to try to build something not based on wealth or building something or overpowering a group, but on this idea of Rahmanas, right? Mercy. And so we have the 36 times we are told that we're supposed to take care of the widow, the orphan, and the stranger in your midst. In other words, the ones that are powerless. A mark of a civilization, according to our Jewish texts, is when you can take advantage over somebody, but you don't. And now we have an entire civilization that's built on this premise. Again, aspirational, right? Clearly there are shortcomings still. So let's go to the second question. How about second and third? 3,000 years later, what's lasting from the Egyptian civilization? What's lasting from the Jewish civilization today? What's lasting or influential from each of these civilizations? Let's start with the Egyptian one. Someone who hasn't spoken yet. You don't have to have inside knowledge on this. Okay.
I think,
Or Sheila, go ahead.
yeah, it's not inspirational, but of course the pyramids are still there.
Yeah.
And that's what the Egyptians are known for now, that they built these pyramids. Judaism, we have our laws that are still with us and keep going forward. And the laws, as you say, that have moved into modern Western civilization that we've shared with the world, and that we keep teaching our children what Judaism is all about and what they should remember, and being good and upright people. And this is all part of what Judaism was then and is continuing to be.
Okay. So on one hand, we have pyramids, these great structures, right? They're still there. And on the other hand, we have this ethical code, right? That we like to claim that we brought into the world. Who knows if we were the originators, but certainly we're the keepers of it, right? We've tasked ourselves to be Or L'Goyim, a light unto the nations. Yes, Jerry.
We were at war in the past, and we have a peace treaty now, which, since it was agreed upon, has lasted, which is more than I ever expected. So I think that says something about how the Egyptian civilization has changed. And it also says something about how Israel was willing to negotiate at that time.
Right. So you're looking at the modern state of Israel and the modern state of Egypt. Okay.
Correct.
Kyle.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Egypt now, but the fact that it is still a country and there's still people there, I mean, we've got to recognize that too. Maybe not the civilization, but I would suspect a lot of the laws and traditions are, at least some of them, are still there from then.
I don't know. I'm actually.
I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. Right. I mean, the ancient Egyptians and the modern Egyptians, they have people who are living in the same land, but it's a different language. It's a different religion, right? But yes, I'm sure some things have come through, but I'm not sure what they are, aside from the things that we're talking about. What else is Judaism 3,000 years later? What is Judaism bringing to the world?
We're still a nation of educators.
Yeah. Yeah, and so why is that important?
the door for door, teaching, each generation the story, whatever, tradition or story. I mean, it just keeps it going.
Okay. Yeah, Stacy?
People don't talk about, with Judaism, it's not about our monuments or our structures from a building. Instead, it's about building legacy. It's about building traditions. So our traditions, our love of Torah, our belief in God is something that's carried on, since the beginning of time, and how we pass that on to our generations.
So we are credited with creating. Okay, and again, I don't know if we really did or we're just the ones who have husbanded it through time. Ethical monotheism, right? The idea that there is such thing as right and wrong, and that not everything is morally relative, right? And that's oftentimes what you get when you have a polytheistic society. We have almost a mantra that we need to move forward in connection with, not connection, as prime movers, and how do you take the world from where it is to where it ought to be, right? So a sense of hope and destiny, and that we're not locked into, well, that's just the way it is, right? Or that's the way it's always been. And there's some audacity to that, right? Audacity to having hope, not just as an individual, but as a generation and multiple generations, right? A string of generations saying, we have a particular place that we need to be and bring the world there. And that world is much better than the world we are in now, or that the world that it was, right? If the world is sick, the world is broken, right? The world is unjust. And here you have a people who, part of our civilization DNA says, yeah, we are told that we're supposed to be a part of this to bring the world forward. To me, that is as important as a pyramid or more. Okay, yeah, Amy.
Right, so we know that the Egyptians were famous for their pyramids and stuff, but they were also famous for the calendar, for paper, for ink, for the development of medicine as it is today. And we need to remember that yes, Judaism has a lot of positives to it, but we remember that a lot of the things that we enjoy today were built on Egyptian civilization.
Right, good point. Others? Joy, was your hand up?
Yes. What I was going to say is also all of our laws and history influenced other religions. So we brought a lot to, and you were saying about how it should be in the world to come, but we already brought a lot to other religions starting and basing their creeds on what we had already established.
Yeah, well, Christianity comes out of Judaism. Islam, you can make the argument, comes out of at least that textual tradition, if not Judaism itself. All right, and others. Look, you can look at the U.S. Constitution is based on the Massachusetts Constitution. The Massachusetts Constitution is based on Leviticus, right? All right, I saw Dana's hand up, and then we're going to go to the Dana and then Roz.
Thank you. I think one of the things that is sort of a common underline here that the last few who have shared have in common is infrastructure. We have an infrastructure that has been building and building, and technology has brought us to the point in this infrastructure where Israel is responsible for the most important inventions today.
Good. All right, Roz, final point on this one, and then we're going to get to memory.
I think we've learned to adjust to the country that we live in. For example, in Southern California, when doctors were not allowed to practice in certain hospitals, we Jews opened up our own hospital. And when they weren't admitted to a non-Jewish country club, so we went out and built our own country club. So we've adjusted to the land that we live in.
And actually, in the daytime in-person class last week, when we're going over some of the aspects of the Jewish civilization, one of the things that was brought up is that we are a hugely adaptable people. And that is actually maybe part and parcel. All right, how about memory? How about memory? How does Rabbi Sachs see the role of memory is vital to Jewish civilization? Yeah, Ross, go ahead.
Well, does it count that as Ashkenazi Jews, we carry the name of our deceased family member?
Okay.
And we carry forward.
Okay, yep. Ashkenazi tradition is that you are named after someone who is deceased within a generation or two past.
Sure. Like my grandson is named after my husband.
How does Rabbi Sachs look at memory and the importance of memory from the article?
He talks about remembering the long road to affliction, away from affliction, and the fact that we retell our story every year as a means of kind of never forgetting. And that sparks each of us, to tikkun olam. It's like, how do we make sure we don't repeat kind of where we were, and move forward?
Beautiful. Yeah, he talks about how those rituals and the retelling of these stories connect the individual Jew's memory to the collective Jew memory for a purpose. For a purpose. Other thoughts on Sachs's take on memory? All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's not just the Passover story. Every week we have a different Torah portion. We tell the stories over and over and over again every year. So that's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, the Passover story is, of course, the central part of Torah, the 5 books, Genesis through Deuteronomy, is the Exodus story, right? We're in the desert for most of that time, but there's other stories that we tell and retell, most of the ones that are ritualized, including new ones that are ritualized. Eileen, is your hand up?
Yes, memory, that's the key story, of course. So he brings that up in several ways, but I do think from my perspective, it's always remembering history as the Jews fit into it, so that you can learn from history, you can go forward, and you continue to teach. So the next generation knows, and the next generation. My mother used to have a saying that my parents were Holocaust survivors. She would say, what's in your brain, what you share from your brain to the next, and what you keep in your brain, Hitler can't take away from you. So that's what was a line she used all the time.
Yeah. Okay, hang on to this idea of memory. We are going to watch the short video of the theory of the 5-legged table. And give me a second here while this boots up. Come on.
I love E.T. Do any of you remember that film? Yes. That little wonderful something from outer space who comes to Earth. And after everything he sees, he phones home and reports.
All right, as we're watching this, I want you to have your pen or pencil, and I want you to jot down what parts really speak to you. What parts really speak to you? There's probably going to be a quote or two that you're going to want to tattoo on your arm. That's great. Write those down too. We're gonna touch base after.
I've been obsessed with the idea, what is it that E.T. reports on after meeting Jews? Who are they? What are they? Why are they so different? How can they all be one and yet be so different. I've been bothered by that because in all of these various positions that Shoshana referred to, the lack of uniformity of the Jewish people from day to day becomes more and more evident. The Jews are no longer uniform. We were never uniform about how to Jew, but we were always uniform until the emancipation of what it meant to be a Jew. That does not exist today. And I'm bothered by the question, is it possible to be unified without being uniform? I have searched for a way to contend with that question. I'd like to share with you what I've developed and has become known as the theory of the five-legged table. Why a five-legged table? Because a table with 5 legs is very sturdy. It is very strong. If all Jews were to fulfill in their lives all 5 legs that I'm going to talk about, we would be very, very strong. But I have seen tables meant for 5 legs stand on 4.
I lost voice.
No sound.
No sound since he started with the table.
We can't hear you either.
All right, how about now? You can hear me now? All right, I think I know what happened. Let's try this again.
In their lives, and they're not even a table. Stand on 4. I've seen them stand on 3. On 2, they tipple over. On 1, they're not even a table. So what am I? I am basically a Jewish carpenter. I travel the world meeting with Jews, trying to talk to Jews about the 5 legs on which I view being Jewish standing. And I try to encourage people to try to internalize in their lives at least 3 out of the 5 legs. It usually begins with an hour-and-a-half lecture. 12 minutes. I'm going to talk to you about the 5 legs. But I do have to tell a story. I come from a long line of very, very well-known physicists. I had an uncle who was the creator of the Sputnik, another one who was the head of physics at Yale. And the day that I was born, my late father knew that I'm going to become the world's greatest physicist. Einstein, nothing compared to my father's dreams about me. So when I went to study at the Hebrew University, I went to study physics. On the first day of school, I was sitting in the physics lab looking outside out of the window. And I saw this very gorgeous young lady walking towards the history department. So I graduated in history instead of in. She's now about to become the great-grandmother of my great-grandchild. But I had to let my father know about this. So I write my father a letter and I tell my father, Abba, I've decided not to study physics. I'm going to devote my life to the study of Jewish history at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I get a reply from my father, not by email. We didn't have it then. I get this thing called a telex. I can see from the size of the letter that my father is furious. But he'd forgotten about me becoming a scientist. He was mad at the Hebrew University. He said, what? The Hebrew University teaches Jewish history? Are they out of their minds? There is no such thing as Jewish history. Jews don't have history. Jews have memory. I had no idea what he was talking about. Today, let me tell you, my father was 100% right. Jews do not have history. That first leg of Jewish life is a sense of memory. On Passover night, we say, "Chayav kol adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim." Each person must see himself as if they personally came out of Egypt. The verb that appears in our tradition more than any other verb is the verb liskor, zochor, zecher, zikaron, yizkor. Remember, remember, remember. We carry it to a phenomenal extreme. A young couple fall in love. They decide to spend their lives together. They get under the bridal canopy. What do? They break a glass. Why? In order to remember the destruction of Jerusalem. I've been in this world for a long time, my friends. I've never met a couple who spent the first night of their marriage worrying about the destruction of Jerusalem. But you can't begin anything Jewish. You can't build anything Jewish. You can't do anything Jewish without calling on memory, which is why the purpose of Jewish education, and the only purpose of Jewish education, is how do you take the individual Jew, open his mind, and help that person link their personal memory to the collective memory of the Jewish people. Memory. Leg number 2. Whose memory? Who are we? Why am I here? Rosh Hashanah told me to be here. But really, why am I here? Most of you people I don't know, and I love you. Maybe I love you because I don't know you. I don't know. But who are we? I always tell the story of this well-known bank in New York called the Chase Manhattan Bank, a successful bank, although it's not a Jewish bank. The Chase Manhattan Bank has a slogan that every kid in the world in New York knows: you have a friend at Chase Manhattan. Cost you a fortune, but you have a friend at Chase Manhattan. When Bank Discount of Israel opened up its first branch in New York, they looked for a slogan to attract customers. And they came out with an amazing slogan that you heard every 4 hours on local television, every hour on local radio. And the slogan said, "You may have a friend at Chase Manhattan, but we're mishpocha." And they hit the nail on the head, because that is the second leg of being Jewish. That understanding, that feeling, that warmth, that sympathy, that empathy, with an understanding that we are a family. That's why we were called B'nai Israel, not Jews, not Hebrews, but the children of Israel. Leg number 3. If memory is to be important to this family, we have to remember that our earliest memory is not that the Jews left Egypt and suddenly appeared in Israel. They stopped somewhere on the way. They stopped at a place called Mount Sinai. And something happened at Mount Sinai. However you interpret Mount Sinai, you can't ignore Mount Sinai. Because Mount Sinai is the place in which we printed our visiting card. We describe to the world who we are. We determine for ourselves how we'll behave, of what's important to us, what are the values that will guide us, how will we, in our own distinctive manner, apply to this family and its memory a world of values and a relationship with the Almighty. And leg number 4, There's a 4A and a 4B. The land of Israel and the state of Israel. They are not the same thing. As you can tell from my accent, I was born in South Africa. South Africa is not only another continent, another country, it's a different hemisphere. When you have summer, they have winter. When you have spring, they have fall. But the amazing thing is that Jews in South Africa start to pray for rain on the last day of Sukkot. It's the middle of October. I don't know anybody in South Africa who wants rain in October. It's the wrong time of the year. And I used to, growing up, used to get very nervous. What would happen if God, for a change, answered a prayer? I didn't always look like this. I used to be a sportsman. I used to play rugby. I wanted to go and play. My friends are praying for rain. I went to my father and said, Abba, why are they praying for rain now? My father looks at me and he says to me, Abraham, our rain doesn't fall in South Africa. Our rain falls in Eretz Israel. Now you try to grow up normal with an answer like that. There's no possible way. But the land of Israel, all of the land of Israel, irrespective of who ruled it or who will rule a part of it, all of the land of Israel is the warehouse of Jewish memory. And 4B, my friends, is the state of Israel. If anybody in this room has reason not to like the state of Israel, it's me. I live there. I have to live with those drivers. I live with that government. I love the state of Israel. In my own time, in my own childhood, the verb that went along with the noun Jewish more than the noun that went along with the adjective more than any other noun was the noun refugee. Jewish refugee, Jewish refugee. Today, there is no such animal in the world as a Jewish refugee for one reason only. There is a state of Israel. And that is why Israel can not only be of importance to the Israeli, but is a basic leg of being Jewish for all Jews around the world. And I'd like to end with leg number 5. I don't know how many of you have ever been to a place called Omaha, Nebraska. I never knew that there was a state in America called Nebraska. I never knew there was a city named after my grandmother, Omaha. But I get invited to lecture in Omaha, Nebraska. I arrive on a Sunday morning. They say to me that my lecture is in the evening. Would I like to visit their Sunday school? I go to the Sunday school. I walk into a classroom. I see a teacher surrounded by a group of 20 or 25 11-year-old kids, and she's trying to teach them how to read a language they don't understand. Do you know what I'm talking about? I looked at the faces of these kids. I saw the suffering of my people. I said to the teacher, why are you doing this? She says to me, I've only got a year or two to their bar mitzvah, bar bat mitzvah, and they have to learn how to pray in Hebrew. I called over one of the kids, I'll never forget him because of his beautiful Hebrew name, Timothy. I said, Timothy, why do you have to pray in Hebrew? He said to me, because God does not understand English. My God, President Bush almost understood English. We pray in Hebrew because all peoples do important things in the language of their culture. Because language conveys cultural concepts that are central to our language. I want to end with one example. All of you must have heard of the phrase to fall in love. I don't know where we get the chutzpah to use that language. You do not fall in love. You rise in love. You don't find this phrase in a Buddhist language or in a Jewish language, only in Christian languages. Because it does come from the concept of the cardinal sin of man, the first fading. How do you say to fall in love in Hebrew? Lehit ahed. It's a unique grammatical form. It's in hitpael. It's reflexive. It's give and take. It's a different concept of love. We know that through our language. Memory, family, Mount Sinai, the land and the state of Israel, and the Hebrew language. If every Jew would find a way of internalizing at least 3 out of those 5 legs in their lives, we won't be uniform, but we will always be unified. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, he's charming, isn't he? Okay. So my hope is that you were able to write some things down about what you might have liked. Oh boy. Dun, dun, dun. All right. I don't know what's going on there. All right, we'll do what we can. So what are the phrases that you liked from the theory of the 5-legged table? Remember, there memory, family, Mount Sinai, which we take to be Torah, accepting it, relationship with God, shaping the world. 4, Israel, land and state. 5, with the Hebrew language. He does a nice job setting up the questions. The Jews, who are they? What are they? Why are they so different? How can they be one and yet so different? Is it possible to be unified without being uniform? And of course, his opening line, Jews don't have history, Jews have memory. So what phrases did you like? Let's see, let's start with the herds. Ken and Terry.
Well, you said some of them. I wrote down, Jews are never uniform. Can you be unified without being uniform? And Jews don't have history, they have memory.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful statement. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, it opened my eyes. I never thought about that we didn't have history. I always thought the history, like the Exodus, that was our history.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he's, turning a phrase, right? I mean, Jews have history as much as anybody has history, but for some reason it's not, I think what he's saying is it's not the central piece. Like, we don't rely on history, we rely on our memory. That's how we convey the important things, not through history. Yeah. Jeffrey.
Something that you alluded to last week, and it hit me when you mentioned about the ultra-Orthodox following halakhic law and then the more secular reform. And that's a question that the Jewish people today, as civilization, has to face with, what's going on in Israel and the ultra-right, ultra-Orthodox parties and all that. Like, can we remain unified going forward if we're not as uniform as maybe we used to be?
Yeah, I mean, right, good point. Right. I mean, when we talk about a Jewish civilization and what are we? Are we people? Right? Are we a culture? Are we a religion? Right? And we are each of those things, but not limited to those things. There's a huge range of what we are within each of those pieces. Right? Maybe we're sort of conglomerates of a couple of those things layer on top, and that's how we got to the term civilization. Maybe it's more than that. And yet, what Rabbi Avraham Infeld, that's who we just watched, makes the claim that up until emancipation, we were all pretty much uniform. I don't know if that's true, but it's, closer to truth than it would be today. And now we are, a heterogeneous group, very much so. So he brings up the 5-legged table, and he says, look, ideally you do all 5, but if you can do 3, if we can all do 3 of these, then we can be unified, if not uniform. And your example of the modern state of Israel, especially with the modern government that's in there right now and the controversy around that, is right on point. Okay. Amy and Bruce, what'd you write down on this one? What'd you like?
Bruce, what do you want to say?
You're muted again.
So Bruce says nothing. I personally like the thing about Israel, the land, and Israel, the state. Because I think a lot of people don't realize they really are dealing with 2 different entities there. And, I've been to Israel so many times, and I don't follow the politics so much because I just follow, my kids live there. I want them to be safe. I don't know all the other stuff, or I don't follow the politics of it, because it depends on whose side you listen to as to whether the politics are acceptable or not. So I just thought it was interesting that he pointed out there are 2 different parts of Israel that we need to recognize.
The land, and what he says, is that regardless of who ruled it or who rules parts of it, that the entire land is, I think he said, it's a vessel for Jewish memory.
Right.
That's the land part. What do you think about his the statement from his father? Bruce, you can answer this one too. The statement from his father that, our rain doesn't fall in South Africa. Our rain falls in Israel. And after Bruce and Amy answer that, I'm going to open it up because I'm really curious about that. What do you think, Bruce?
I missed that.
He might have been dozy.
All right. I'll
Sorry,
let you-
guys, we have a house full of Israelis staying with us, so we're not getting a lot of rest right now. We have a lot of grandkids here, but I think that it's interesting because, it is true. We live our lives praying for what will be best for Israel, because it's so important to us as a people. We're going to Spike, they're all coming in now. So we're supposed to say something, then I'm turning us off.
Interesting thing happened last night. Amy's sister asked Amy for me to speak to her son and ask him why there was a demonstration, a huge statewide demonstration in Israel yesterday.
In Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem. And Akiva turned around to me and says, why shouldn't there be? There's always a demonstration here. So everybody has something to say.
So,
Everybody, wants things their way.
and they walk in the Orthodox world and we walk in the Reform world. So we are never going to agree on what's going on. We're in a class with the rabbi right now.
All right.
Okay,
All right.
let's say goodbye, everyone.
All right. Denise and then Bev.
Okay, so my comment was not
Right.
what you just asked, so are
No,
you
that's
want?
fine.
us to
Take it
still
where you
com-
want. Take it where you want.
Okay, so I wanted to go back to where the speaker was first talking about, where he first said, how can we all be one yet different? Which really resonates with me, just that acceptance of being able to be different and be able to be who you are, yet still be one, one group of people with all these similarities, yet a lot of these differences. The other part for me was, I just really like the symbolism of the 5-legged table, the strength of the 5 legs, the strength of the 4 legs, the strength of even the 3 legs. One leg can't really stand and the two legs can topple over basically. And just the symbol of that and all the different legs that he talked about, to me was just really very powerful. And I really understood it.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it strikes a chord for me as well.
Yeah.
Bev,
I think the part that interested me was the second leg of family. Because I think that's something that even though we have diversity and even though we may be uniform, or even if we're not unified or uniform, I think there's no question that even Christians, I think anyone would see Jews as having a very strong emphasis on family.
you know, one of the right along those lines, Bev, one of the things that was brought up last week in the in-person class when I'm talking about what makes the Jewish civilization a civilization, what are some characteristics about us? And somebody just said something along the lines of, hey, it's hard to express, but I care about Jews everywhere. I care, right? There's a natural, sense of wanting to take care of and protect and seek out and talk to and learn about, and that is something that's hard to put in there. And I think his great example of Discount Bank of Israel in New York versus Chase Manhattan Bank, right? You may have a friend at Chase Manhattan, but here we're mishpacha, and we know that that's a loaded term, right? But there is a sense of connection and trust that comes with that. And I think that that's, when we're talking about family, it's not just the nuclear family, right? Kol ha'eravim zeh lezeh, that we're all Jews are responsible for one another. Paula and Lou, I've not picked on you yet. What'd you like about what stuck with you about Rabbi Infeld's five-legged table?
The concept of 5 legs being made just, but if you follow 3 of them, you will be just as stable and not be able to topple over. It kind of said that there's many aspects of Judaism, and you have to decide what's most important to you. And when you do, you will be a Jew, not necessarily like every other Jew, but you'll still be dealing with the values and the most important parts. I thought that was his message.
Yeah, and he takes it both to the personal, right? Or he infers the personal, right? And also the communal. When we do this, when everybody does as many of these 5 things, even if it's 3, then we will be very, very strong, right? That somehow we balance each other out. Not everyone's going to be on the same pole, the same time. Jeffrey.
Yeah, quick comment about with not Paula, the man next to Paula there said, I was happy that he said 3 out of 5, because I'm figuring if I have to get 5 out of 5, and I'm not going to be learning Hebrew too well now, I'm going to flunk. So I'm glad it was only 60%. But something about what you said about caring, like, I think it's a collective group. When somebody Jewish wins a Nobel Prize or does something great to help mankind, we're all proud. And on the other hand, sometimes if there's somebody, a killer or somebody did something bad, I hope he's not Jewish. I hope she is, whatever, usually a man would do it. But like, we don't want anything bad to happen because we feel like it's a both collective joy when somebody does something, but collectively feeling bad, like, uh-oh. I think that. I think a lot of my friends have expressed that too.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do, right? We're psyched when we see the the draft pick for the NBA is Jewish, but boy, Madoff, did you have to be Jewish, right? Like,
right.
You have to do this again, right? Eileen.
This time, Philip.
Hey, Philip.
Hey, I'm fascinated by the notion of not uniform, but unified. And for me, it is so true about the Jewish people, about how unified we are. But the question I pose is, how much of it is affected by the history of what's going on, by the numbers of the Jews that exist, by the suffering that has occurred throughout history, the pogroms and the diaspora and the Holocaust, that has led us to be more unified than any other civilization in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, right? Let's call it, I don't know, 18 million of us, give or take a million, that's about right. Right, something like that. We're pretty close. If there was 300 million of us, would we feel the same way? If there was a billion of us, would we feel the same way?
Exactly.
Right? If we hadn't had our, specific history, and we, there are some ups, but there are also some really challenging downs. Would we still feel Kol Aravim Zed Lazed, that all Jews are responsible for one another?
We'd like to think that we would, and I hope we can make the case, that we would still feel unified. I think you can make the case, but it's a question to think about.
Yeah, and as a hypothetical, it's an interesting one. And yet each of us individually and as a people, we are a culmination of our past experiences, right? Our experiences shape who we are.
Right.
Right. All right. It is 8 o'clock. Next week, Tuesday night we'll be online. Wednesday we'll be at the courthouse, or the state capitol rather, and Thursday in person if you'd like to do in person. And I will send, after the class tomorrow, I will send the materials from this week in case you
This
want to.
hour goes too fast, Rabbi Spike.
All right.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I didn't receive the information from last week, and I still wasn't on the list for the Zoom for
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, Bev, you're not signed up for the class, so I'm gonna send a
What?
note. You aren't signed.
I've got my response that I was.
Okay, I mean, I'll make sure you get it. You're not on my list, so something happened. I'm
Well,
glad.
yeah, last week I sent it to the office. Okay.
I'll make sure that you.
Bev, I forwarded the information that Rabbi
I got
Spike
it.
sent us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.